Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name, as always, is Paul Dolsky, and tonight we are going to talk with an actress because she was in a local Vermont short horror film that is based on a local legend, which, depending on the crowd of people kind of waver between it's an overrated legend or people just don't really know about it. So it's really interesting how that works. But anyway, without further ado, we can talk more about the legend in a minute, but let's get on our actress, which by the name is Emily Bennett. Emily, welcome aboard.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for your time and stuff like that to arrange this and everything else. So, before we begin, Emily, before we even go into the Vermont legend and stuff like that, I think it would be a nice little way to figure out who is Emily Bennett, and
I'm constantly asking myself the same thing. I'm Emily Bennett. I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, so a very different climate than the THAW takes place in. But born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, quickly realized I wanted to be an actress and got into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts when I was about 17 and moved to London. So I trained as an actor in London with very famous British actors of stage and screen, and it was a wonderful experience. It really gave me a great appreciation of classical drama, Shakespeare. I was a history nerd, so anything that was like a period piece or in a corset, I was very excited about. Then I moved back to the States, living in New York and Chicago off and on, got my SAG card, continued acting, and then that actually led me into filmmaking myself. So mostly nowadays, I am a screenwriter and a film director. I'm repped by Spectrevision, Elijah Wood's company, and I write mostly horror and psychological thriller films that sometimes I act in and sometimes I am just the director. And that is actually how I met Sean and Sarah, the directors of the THAW. I met them at a horror film festival where I wrote and directed a short film that I also acted in, and they were very sweet and approached me after saying they loved my performance and they'd love to talk to me about a really exciting short film, and that's the short film we're going to talk about today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love when stuff like that happens and how, that sort of environment connects people and then it turns into almost like a network and committee, if I can even say it like that. But either way, though, it's an amazing way to find people that are into the same stuff as you. Now, just real quick, for people that are listening, so yes, Emily brought up the title of the short film called The THAW, which is also obviously the episode title of this, because otherwise, why did you not click on it, I guess? I don't even know. Anyway, so just to give everybody a quick summary of what is going on with The THAW. So in the late 19th century in the challenging Vermont hills, Ruth and her aging parents struggle to subsist on a failing farm after Ruth is abandoned by an unfaithful husband. They turn to a remedy as old as the hills, a potion that allows the elderly and infirm to sleep out the winter months while frozen and packed in snow. To be safely revived in the spring, Ruth faces the prospect of surviving the winter on her own. When a storm blows in an early thaw, the ritual is broken and the sleepers wake too soon, awakening a monstrous appetite in Ruth's fodder. Will Ruth be able to do what it takes to survive? So there you go.
Yes.
So, this did premiere on the YouTube channel called Alter. I actually forgot when exactly it got premiered, but I know it was like almost a month or so ago. And so yeah, so I guess Emily, before we kind of start about the thaw, so what about the Vermont legend that it is actually talking about? You know, the whole frozen people legend of this, really, of what you've been or what you were acting in. Basically, did you know about this legend prior? Did you have to look it up, or were you kind of pretty much knowledgeable of some of the legends, regardless?
No, I was not aware of this urban legend or rural legend. No, Sean and Sarah, it was the first time I had ever heard about it, and they mentioned it when they approached me with the role, just saying, that they're from Vermont, or Sean's from Vermont at least, and they live in Vermont now, and they were just really interested in exploring a kind of legend from the land. And I'm from the South. We have our own ghost stories and legends, but I found this so interesting and like an oddly practical urban legend in a way, because as you know, Paul, and I live upstate New York now with my husband,
Right.
it gets really snowy. And like right now I'm looking at snow outside, waiting for it to melt for the season. I know it's going to be a little bit longer, but way back in the day when there wasn't central heating and Wi-Fi and all the things we have now, it's interesting to hear these stories about how people would survive winters. And I loved this kind of legend that, just to save on food and supplies, people would just put the older people in their family to sleep. They would literally freeze them, and then thaw them in the spring. And I'm sure that's how we all feel in the winter in Vermont and upstate New York. But, obviously this didn't actually happen. You can't, spoiler, you can't really in real life, like, freeze someone and then thaw them. It doesn't quite work that way. But this legend said, no, it does. And a lot of local people would say, oh, no, actually, I heard that happened to my great-great-grandfather, or, and maybe, sure, that's cool. I just found it such an enticing story and legend to kind of base a short film on. So, yeah, to answer your question, I had never heard of it, but it instantly, like, caught my attention. It felt a little like an old-timey Twilight Zone, in a way.
Yes, I do agree with that. It does feel like almost like it should be like a perfect episode for the Twilight Zone. Not only that, but like, part of the legend state too that this particular uh, family group, basically somebody kept like a journal of supposedly like everything, and then this guy too that was invited to see the process wrote notes about, this is what they did. And then he came back when it was time for the family to get sought out. And, he wrote the experience there. So it's one of those things where, it's like, well, was there really a journal or was there really not a journal? So, I mean, who knows
Yeah.
in this aspect?
Yeah, and that's the fun of legends like this, because there's so little, there's not really footage of 19th century Vermont. Like we have photographs, and in working with Sean and Sarah on this short film, it was really important for them to share photographs of the area, books, that really detailed life and farm life in 19th century Vermont. But, there's no footage, and so all we have are these texts, like the journal you're talking about. And because there's not a lot of information, the imagination can kind of run wild. Um, and that's, I guess, how they came up with this beautiful, horrific short film.
Well, yeah, I mean, like exactly like what you just said there. I mean, the imagination is a beautiful thing, I think. But once you start to take that away from the audience, then where is the imagination? Where is the mystery? Like, if you start answering everything, then what's left?
Mm, very true.
I mean, I know this is like a haunted Vermont podcast, but I can give you a quick example for what I'm saying too. Like, everybody should know this, this classic film like Aliens, like Alien 3, all that stuff.
Mm,
But as soon
yeah.
as you start bringing in like Prometheus and Alien Covenant, the mystery about the engineers that we saw and this and that, what was the imagination and mysterious aspect of what those things were now kind of falls into, well, if this is what it is, then the mystery and imagination is gone now because we already know what it is. Or now
Mm,
we know what it is.
totally. Well, it's like Jaws, right? Jaws is scary because you don't see the shark most of the time, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's what's underneath, and I think the interesting thing about the Thaw is even though they brought this legend to life, I don't think they answer every question about this ritual, which is why I find the film is successful. Because we don't actually know what's in this potion, why does it go wrong, and what happens to her father. Because the real horrifying thing about the film is when they're going through the ritual and Ruth, the character I played, does it as well as she can. This is the first time she's ever really had to do this and follow her mother's instructions and from older books. But the horrific part of this is when it kind of goes wrong. And that's not in the book. That's not written down. And so what happens when things go awry? I think, and the mystery of what happens to the dad, I still don't really know, and I was in the film. I'm not really sure what happens to him. I guess you'd have to talk to the actor who played him, because whatever he was doing was very terrifying.
Yeah, if I can get a hold of him, I would gladly ask him what is going on here. But that leads to the question of, do we want to know? Do we want to leave that part out so we don't know? Again, that's kind of
Yeah,
like falls back into the imagination of what happened. So, yeah.
totally.
But yeah, so you did start talking about the THAW. So Emily, tell us a little bit more about it. So you kind of just said, you met Sean and Sarah, and they asked you about this role and everything else. So I guess explain to us a little bit more of filming the THAW. Really, I guess. I see that it was filmed in Stowe, Vermont, which is a beautiful town anyway, full of legends there,
Mm.
especially with like Emily's Bridge and stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, so talk to us a little bit about the experience of like working with Sean, Sarah, and did you have like the freedom to try something different, see if it worked, that kind of thing. Anyway, I'll shut up so you can let us know how the days of filming kind of came to be.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, like I said, Sean Temple and Sarah Weisner approached me at a film festival, and they said, we'd love for you to play this role. And I immediately was like, tell me about it. And once they told me this legend, I was like, yes, I definitely want to do this. Then COVID happened, and we all had to wait for life to continue. So honestly, this film took many years to finally get off the ground just because of COVID difficulties. So when we finally got to set, we shot this in 2022. I feel, or no, 2023. Time, COVID is still playing on my brain because I'm like, what year is it? Anyway,
I hear
we,
you.
oh my gosh, what is time? But we ended up shooting. So the woman who plays my mother, Toby Poser, she was already a dear friend of mine, and I was so glad that Sean and Sarah asked her to play my mother. And so she actually drove up. She's an upstater too, so she drove and picked me up, and we had a lovely winter drive, like a 6-hour drive to Stowe together. So that was really nice to kind of lay in that mother-daughter relationship and just to spend time together. And so we got to set. I stayed at a local hotel. The cast and crew were put up, just locally in Stowe, and we were shooting in a historical house that was owned by a couple, and they were there the entire time. They were so lovely and welcoming. And this house was, oh my gosh, it was on top of a mountain, like kept like a museum, this place. It was incredible. There were certain portions of like the kitchen that were modern, like a modern fridge, but overall the husband and wife had really worked to maintain the historical integrity of this wonderful home. The wife, who I really spoke to most, her name is Lyndall. I won't say her last name just for privacy, but she was so wonderful and so welcoming, and the house was just so fascinating. Like I felt like I had gone back in time when I got there. So we traveled up. We went to set. I was fit for all of my wardrobe, which were very, very like period appropriate, very heavy wools, and went to set. And I worked with a magic consultant on set as well, which was so interesting because I had never worked with someone to consult like magic before. Deirdre Catero, she was just wonderful, and so I got to know the tools that Ruth would use and hold the items, the stage, and the different herbs and things that she would know. So that was kind of my introduction to the world, was just very physical, breathing in the space, moving in the space, feeling the costumes, and really starting to feel lived in. And then we started shooting, and I think we only shot for 3 days. And luckily, well, luckily and unluckily, we got a huge amount of snow the day before production. So while that was glorious, and you can see it in the film is in beautiful black and white, just so gorgeously shot. And by Damon Waldron, the DP, the cinematographer. And just the black and white, the coldness, all of that snow in frame just made the frames they were like painting, like photographs from that era that Sean and Sarah had showed me. It was just perfect. That made production a bit difficult because we had to get like the food up the mountain and like gear and things like that, and it was difficult to shoot. But all in all, it was just so worth it, and I feel like we were just really lucky throughout the entire production, because this is a very difficult story to shoot. It's a period piece. It's black and white. You can't have a piece of modern anything in any of the frames, and so everything had to be very specific and meticulous. And on top of that, it's horror. And there are some pretty horrific sequences through this, through the parents being put to sleep in coffin-like beds outside. I had to chop wood. I had to kind of forage in the woods. And, we're physically walking through these things. So it was doing a lot of the acting work for me, because that's tiring. And, eventually, like I said, the horror sequences, there is blood, there is gore, there is violence in this film. And I don't want to give anything away, really, just so that people do watch the film. But the experience was really varied and exciting. And it was really kind of a magic trick, because I really felt like I was living this story while we were in it, and that's just credit to the directors and the production design and the beauty of Vermont. I mean, Vermont really played a character in this short film, so So yeah, the filming was great. That's my answer.
And I would say that's a good answer for sure. And that what you kind of said about the photography, this and that, the black and white alone is what won me over with it. It's because
Mm.
I feel like if you are going to do something like 19th century, you want black and white. You don't really want it color because then it feels like it's modern, if
Mm.
that makes any sense. But
Yeah.
like I mean, I would totally would love to see like some sort of colored version of this, just to kind of just see it that way. But at the same time, I don't, because black and white fits, like you were just saying, like fit this timeline, the story so well that it's like why not, you know?
Totally.
And yeah, I mean the snow in there. Well, yeah, I do agree. Like that big dump of snow definitely did help, especially with the shot where it's you outside with the parents in the the boards with the hay and straw or whatever, and getting ready
Mm.
to clothe them up for the winter. But that shot over the shoulder is like the perfect shot to see, like just them laying there with the heavy snow, and it's just kind of like, wow, like this is it, like this is the last time your character is going to see them until spring,
Mm.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a terrifying idea, right? To put your parents, the only people in your life, to sleep and like trust that this magic will work and not kill them, you know? It was, it was very
Mm,
emotional to think about. If because as an actor, you have to put yourself in the character's shoes. And if I thought, like, oh my God, like to do that to my own mother, I like, no, that terrifies me. That's so scary. So I think the emotional horror of the film is really effective too. Uh,
not just that. And sorry if that seemed like I was cut it in, but you just saying that kind of reminded me the part where like you would even go and when or to, like to check on them. I think it was before the final, like boarding up thing, but you were leaning
mm,
down into the boards and like listening for the heartbeat, which I thought that was a fantastic addition, where you hear that
mm.
low sounding of the heartbeat, kind of saying like, yeah, so she is still there, like alive, but she's not um man, what's a good way to put it? Like she's paralyzed, I guess. I don't know the right term here.
Yeah, yeah, she's kind of in a coma, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that was a great addition though.
yeah. I loved that moment, and that is the moment that the audience is like, are they? Are they? Okay, they're still alive.
You're
Um,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, so it sounds like you like when you cut in the wood and stuff, it almost sounds like this is like really like you not just getting into character, but you're really like trying to get into the story aspect of like you were saying, cutting wood, doing this, taking care of the sheep. So like I guess to prepare yourself for this type of character, especially now, like like you said, cutting wood and stuff, like I guess before maybe shooting, did you like go out to try to start cutting wood before the shooting? Like, how did you mentally prepare yourself for this?
Um, no, I didn't go out and chop wood before, but my stepfather had made me do it when I was a kid, and so I had like the physical memory of doing that. Of being like, I don't need to do this. But I'm really grateful to him because I actually remembered how when I had to get to set. So I did practice many times before I had to do that on camera. But yeah, let's see, to physically prepare. I mean, I live upstate, so I was in similar snowy conditions. So honestly, I feel like just getting around typically is like my body's kind of used to it now. I don't like it, but like getting around in the snow, you have to walk differently. You have to wear obviously different shoes, and so you don't slip and fall. But honestly, the preparation for Ruth was more mental because she's not like the most physically able person. She's, you know, as you said, her husband just abandoned her basically. And back in the 19th century, the woman, most women would rely on their husbands for income, for safety, for food and shelter. And, you know, they would keep the house, they would do needlepoint, and, you know, do dishes and housework. And so that was the physical reality Ruth was coming from. And so, which is why it's so overwhelming when she gets to the country and she has to live by herself, because she's doing a lot of this for the first time. So it didn't actually make sense for me to like do a bunch of push-ups and like chop a ton of wood, because Ruth wouldn't have done that herself. She would have been blindsided by her husband leaving her and then having to figure things out in real time. So in a way, I wanted the film to surprise me constantly. I wanted to be a fish out of water as much as possible, because that makes Ruth more vulnerable, being alone in this very harsh climate. And then when the father wakes up, it is important to think of Ruth as an underdog, because when she's faced with danger, it creates more tension that, oh no, will she survive this? And so I really just wanted to lean into that. Now, Ruth is very intelligent and pays attention. And so most of my attention was paid to Ruth's inner process and her mental fortitude, and her inner strength, because I don't know that I would survive something like this. Ruth has an incredible integrity to her, and the fact, you know, that she goes through all of this is a huge ordeal. I don't know that Emily Bennett would have fared as well. I'll just say that.
Okay, that's fair. So, to counter your comment there that you said about fish out of water, what would you say your challenging moment was?
The most challenging moment, let's say, that's interesting. Challenging in what way? Like physically, or?
I guess both. You could, if you want both, like physically and mentally, maybe. If there is a mental one, but yeah, if there's a physical one, yeah, normally there's more physical, I would say.
Yeah, well, I can answer both actually. Physically, the most difficult thing I did was just running in the snow away from, and again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but like,
yeah, just running. You're just running away, yeah.
Just running for my life. Because I was just desperately trying not to fall the entire time. Because I know I was like, oh God, I don't want to like get hurt and then have to like pause filming. So that was like physically, funnily enough, like the hardest thing. But I would say like mentally, the hardest thing was I had to be put into one of the boxes, like one of the coffins, and I found that actually the hardest thing, partially because they were very dusty, and like particles were kind of getting in my eyes, and I was just like, ugh. But then when that happened, which didn't really hurt, it just made me that much more aware that I was in a coffin. And I think, I don't know about you or like your listeners, but being buried alive is like a horrifying prospect. Like, I think that's just a terrifying thing. And to be put in a coffin and have the lid put on was really unnerving for me. So I'd say that was probably the hardest thing for me.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So before we move on, Emily, because I don't know if I want to really ask too much more about the THAW, but are there any closing comments for the THAW that you would like to say before we move on to the last few segment questions?
No, I think I've said enough. The Thaw is streaming on YouTube on the Alter channel, so definitely watch it.
Yeah, I can't agree any more than just take a second and go watch it. It's like around 17 minutes or so, so definitely worth to watch.
Yeah.
All right, so Emily, to kind of start wrapping things up just a little bit, since this is like haunted Vermont and stuff, I almost feel like these have to sort of be like default questions in a way, but just out of curiosity. But do you have any? Is there like any thoughts or opinion that you may have on like the whole paranormal universe? It can be like ghosts, or it could be like cryptozoology. Wow.
Mm.
Okay. Or do you or even like to kind of uh have a second question that follows along the same thing is, was there any moment in your life where anything strange had happened that you could not, quite figure out what it was?
Mm. That's a good question. Let me see here. My relationship with the paranormal. It's funny. Being from Charleston, it's such a haunted city, and I've been on ghost tours, and in London, I've lived in London, and it's super haunted. I am really sad that I've never been visited by a ghost myself. And I'm like, in a horror movie, I feel like there's always like the believer and the skeptic. Um, I'm definitely the skeptic in that. But I desperately don't want to be. So I feel like I would love the paranormal to visit me in some way. It just hasn't happened yet, and I feel like if anyone's going to get haunted, my gosh, there are tons of opportunities to haunt me. Now, having said that, I will say this. I think there are, I don't know, I think places can have energies, and homes, or I don't know. The one thing I can say is, like, one of the closest people in my life passed away recently. My grandmother, my nana, and her house was just so sacred, and it had a smell all its own, and I can't really talk about it too much without getting emotional, but her home just had this energy to it, and so full of memories. And I remember after she passed away, going into that house and, like, taking certain things out, and being very careful, and working with the rest of my family to be like, okay, are you going to keep this? Okay, this is where we put this. And it was almost like the walls were still echoing our voice and her voices. Like, you couldn't hear it, but it felt like the house was still kind of vibrating with her, like with the love that she had. And I think, I don't know, I think that's kind of the closest I can say. And I don't think my grandmother would haunt me, because she I don't know, she was just so kind and loving, and I don't know that she has unfinished business necessarily to finish, but that energy stayed behind for sure. So that's the closest I can think. And then, having said that, I would very much welcome a ghost. I think that would be super cool.
Well, first off, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know, I totally
Thank you.
understand that. I lost my dad in September of 2003, so heart attack. So I know exactly what you mean when it comes to having to go through somebody else's belongings and stuff like that. And then when you are in like the space where it used to be lively, I guess would be a good term right now. But yeah, I do agree with you. It's like the house kind of bears like that emotional energy that, you know, like in this case, your Nana, you know, loved that house, kept it and stuff like that, and everything. That the question that I wanted to kind of ask you is, um, had there been any weird moments where like you, how can I say this, like there's like a specific like a smell in the air that you would say, huh, you know, that reminds me of Nana. Like, have you ever smelled anything that she may have worn, or like perfume wise, or, you know, anything like that to say like, you know, like that kind of like a certain smell that reminded you of her, I guess.
I mean, her specifically, yeah, for sure. I think smell is like the most evocative scent, really. It's like the most emotional scent I've heard, or yeah, like scents that we have.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think every now and then, yeah, I feel like certainly in her house, but if I smell something specific and I can't describe what it is, yeah, it'll feel like she's near for sure.
And
I will
that
say,
would be a sign.
yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, that's true actually. I never thought of that. Well, maybe I'll pay more attention now. Now that you've said that, because I've never really thought in that way. But yeah, I guess it catches me unawares sometimes. Um, that's a really nice thought. Thank you for that, Paul. I'll think about
You're,
that if
you're
that
very
happens
welcome.
again.
Yeah, you know, like, this is gonna sound weird. Like my dad used to smoke cigars, and he used to make certain food. So like there would be moments where I would almost smell like a cigar or something even like a cologne that
Mm.
my dad wore. Like that's another example I can give you. Also birds are, you know, a sign. What is it? A cardinal, right? I think it's a cardinal. Like if you see a cardinal, that usually means that somebody from the other side is watching you or something like that. Don't quote me on cardinal, but I want to say it is
Mm.
a cardinal. Maybe it's a robin. I know it's one of them.
Oh, that's so interesting. I like that. There's like that's so interesting. Like they're a harbinger.
Yes.
Ooh, that's very cool. Well, I'm as a horror writer, I find that really interesting. Maybe I'll have to write something about that. That's cool.
Hmm. Um, One thing I didn't know, this is kind of going off topic for a minute, but with birds, but for some reason, talking about birds just reminded me of this, and now I just want to say it anyway. But anyway, so I'm a big fan of Alfred Hitchcock. I love
Mm.
the movie The Birds, and I've just found out, like a while ago, that when it came to making that movie, they actually trained over like 2,000 birds for that movie.
Really?
So so that's what I read. Yeah, like they trained over 2,000 birds for that movie. It might have been
Oh
more,
my
but I
gosh,
remember 2,000.
that's crazy. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I never knew that.
yeah, I didn't either until I read it somewhere. If I find it again, I'll send it to you.
Oh my gosh, I really need to rewatch that film. Ugh, that
Hmm.
I was terrified of birds after first seeing that film. That's like, I think a testament to Hitchcock because, of course, he would have the patience to train a ton of birds, but also only he could make me afraid of birds. Like I was never afraid of birds. Like why would you be afraid of birds until Hitchcock tells you to, and then you're like, oh yeah, well now I'm terrified of birds.
Right, right. It's like what's the other weird movie that, well, I don't want to, yeah, in a way it is weird because of the whole idea of what they did with bats, but bats. I mean, they were like being controlled to do basically to assassinate you per se. So yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's a weird movie for sure. But yeah, I mean, for those ideas though, so now you can definitely kind of have like a more open-minded to be like, it's that's what I can offer you now to try to see if you can spot anything like that, any sort of like weird signs like that, like birds is one, like I said, like smells, especially where it should not have a smell, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it any better than that, but like if you smell something that should not be there and you recognize it, I guess that's where you should pay attention to it, I guess would be the best way for me to say that.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to keep my eye out. And I think as the snow melts and the birds come out, I'm going to pay more attention to the birds that I see too.
Yeah, if you see one that kind of seems to be closer to your to you or like your surrounding more than the other bird, then that's the one that's usually the one that's watching, that paying a visit per se, as they say.
Cool. Okay. I'm definitely going to pay more attention now.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear maybe in the future or something like a message from you later on, like, I think this happened because blah, 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 blah. So it'd be nice to really see if you catch on to anything interesting, Emily, for sure. Any, like, little strange signs like that, I guess. So.
Yeah. No, totally. I will definitely let you know.
Perfect. Well, Emily, we come down to the finale, which is basically, well, we talked everything we can. I don't want to really talk more of your ear off per se, but I mean, so for everybody else that want to check out you and your works, because you said you're pretty much almost in the whole field of everything. You write, you direct, you act. I mean, like, so where can people that would like to keep up with you with all your projects?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the best way to keep up like real time with what I'm up to is on Instagram. Like a lot of people, I guess. I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Emily R. Bennett. Just my name, EmilYRBennett. 2 N's, 2 T's. And that's the best way to do it. I also have a website, www.emilyreneebennett.com. So yeah, I keep those pretty current. So, and I'm always doing, I never know what I'm going to be doing next. So stay tuned. I know I will.
Is there anything coming up that you could probably share or not really?
Let's see. I was in a really wonderful horror film called Shelby Oaks recently that premiered at Fantasia last year. The production company Neon picked it up, and it will release later this year. So that's a big, awesome horror film that I had the pleasure of being in. Amazing cast and crew. And then my next feature film that I co-wrote and co-directed with my husband, Justin Brooks, will be coming out later this year as well. So I can't share anything about that one just yet, but I will keep you posted.
That sounds like an awesome little thing I get to look forward to, since I don't really know what else to say to that, because we got to be quiet right at the moment. But yeah,
that's right. I know.
No, that's always the hard time when you want to talk about something and then you can't talk about it, and it's like, oh. But anyway, Emily, again, thank you for your time. Like I said, I don't want to take any more of it. So, but it's been a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to figure out a time and day for sure.
No, thank you so much, Paul. And yeah, and everybody go watch The Thaw. Sean and Sarah made a beautiful film, and uh, yeah, and leave nice comments in the comment section.
Right? Yes, and I will second that. Please go check out The Thaw if you have not. Just give yourself 17 minutes free, put some popcorn and soda pop on or something, whatever you want to use, and then just have fun with it.
Definitely.
And then, yeah, and then for everybody else, well, you know the drill. Keep your eyes open because you just never know if an apparition will appear in front of you.